Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lumiere Symposium and graduation ceremony for the summer 2023 cohort. My name is Dhruva. I'm a doctoral candidate at Oxford University in the UK and one of the directors of the program. And we are so excited to have you all here today. The summer 2023 cohort was Lumiere's biggest cohort yet. We had students from 59 different countries doing research on topics ranging from the likelihood of patients with HIV getting Burkitt's lymphoma, a comparison of the international relations of the United States and its foreign aid policies in Ukraine versus Afghanistan and Yugoslavia, questions like the feasibility of using deep learning to flag damaged products in industrial manufacturing, and everything in between. We were so impressed by the quality of the work that all of you did, the engagement that you had with your mentors, and we cannot wait to see the kinds of academic and research journeys all of you take. We sincerely and really hope that this is not the end, but the start of the research journey for all of you. And to give you a taste of what that journey could look like, we have an incredible guest speaker today. So our guest speaker today is Professor Eric Maskin. I have a personal story that I was just sharing with him earlier. Professor Maskin is the Adams University professor at Harvard. For those of you who are unaware, university professorship is the highest honor that Harvard can give a professor. So Professor Maskin is one of, I think, 10 university professors across all of the Harvard University faculty. He's a Nobel Prize winner in economics, and he's contributed to fields as varied as game theory, contract theory, social choice theory, and many other areas of economics. When I was an undergrad, I got the chance to sit in on one of the classes that Professor Maskin taught with another Nobel laureate, Professor Amartya Sen. I did discover as a sophomore that the math in that first lecture scared me so much that I decided that I needed to come back in a later year. And unfortunately, never ended up taking the class, but I am so glad that I get to make up for it by hearing Professor Maskin speak at this graduation ceremony. So I'm going to pass it to Professor Maskin. He'll speak for 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. So if you have a question, please use the raise hand function on Zoom, and I will pick on some of you to ask questions after that. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Congratulations once again, and I am passing it to Professor Maskin.
Well, hello, everyone, and congratulations. I know this is a big day for many of you. I thought what I would do, since many of you have had a taste of research this summer and may be thinking of going on to do more research, is to tell you a little bit about my story, because I ended up making a career of research, and that's something that maybe some of you will want to do too. So I went to a high school, public high school in northern New Jersey. It was pretty near New York City, so I occasionally took the bus into the city because I liked music and I liked theater. And I've always enjoyed living near a big city to take advantage of what cities can offer. And in high school, I was lucky enough to have as my math teacher one year, my calculus teacher, a very inspirational figure, Mr. Pierce. And what Mr. Pierce made clear was that, yes, you can use math to make calculations, computations. It's a very powerful tool in many fields of study, especially scientific and engineering, but it's also a beautiful subject in itself. The theorems in mathematics are beautiful in the way that a great piece of art is beautiful. And I discovered that mathematicians are driven mostly by that beauty. That is, when they're looking for a new theorem, and that's what a professional mathematician tends to spend a lot of time on, he or she is looking for something that will stand out as beautiful. And that beauty could arise because the object being studied is highly symmetric. Symmetry is something that appeals to the human eye or to the human soul, or it could be because it's amazingly simple. What you thought was a very complicated object turns out to be surprisingly simple. That's beautiful. Uh, in any case, this teacher got me connected to the beauty of mathematics, and in fact, he was quite lenient in the way that he conducted his class, and so he allowed me to spend most of my time outside class doing exploring mathematics on my own. So that was great for me because I taught myself a lot of math, and I think it was great for him because he really did enjoy showing at least some of his students the possibilities that are inherent in mathematics. So then I went to college, and not surprisingly, I became a math major, and I took quite a few high-level courses in math, in analysis and algebra and other areas of number theory. And then toward the end of my college career, someone suggested that I take an advanced economics class from a professor named Kenneth Arrow. And I didn't really know much about economics. I didn't have any elementary courses in economics, but I was told that Arrow was going to use some interesting mathematics in this class, and I might learn about some interesting things that could be done with mathematics. So mainly to satisfy my curiosity, I took this course. It was called Economics of Information. And it did have a bit of what is called information theory. The information theory was developed by a mathematician named Claude Shannon to analyze communication over long distances, such as communication by telephone, but it can be used for many other purposes as well. But Professor Arrow actually just threw into this course basically every topic that he was thinking about at the time and wanted to talk to us about. So he also threw in a bit of what's now called mechanism design. Mechanism design is the part of economics where you go in reverse. So usually in economics, you look at an institution and you try to predict or explain what kinds of outcomes that institution generates. But in mechanism design, you do exactly the opposite. That is, you start with the outcomes that you would like to have, and then you move backwards to ask, well, can I design an institution or a mechanism for achieving the outcome I would like to have? So that really grabbed my attention because I could see that mechanism design was potentially very, very powerful. Uh, here's an example of a real world mechanism. Um, we want to stop climate change. And how do we stop climate change? Well, one important ingredient is reducing carbon dioxide emissions. How do we reduce carbon dioxide emissions? Well, we need an effective and universally agreed to international treaty in which all the countries of the world pledge to reduce their carbon emissions by a certain amount, by a certain time. And if they fail to live up to their obligation, there will be serious consequences. Well, designing an international treaty, we don't have such a treaty at the moment, but there are people at work, mechanism design people at work, trying to come up with such a treaty. That is an exercise in mechanism design. So I realized from that course that mechanism design was potentially extremely useful, but it was also extremely interesting from an intellectual point of view because it used the same sort of mathematics that I had found so beautiful when I was studying it for its own sake, and it used it in a creative way to build economic and social mechanisms. So really, on the basis of that course, I got hooked, and I've spent a good deal of my career on the fundamentals of mechanism design. And I've also got involved in, from time to time, in applied projects, putting mechanism design to use. So, for example, I helped design the UK carbon auction a few years ago, which was interesting and useful. And I've spent my career at a university where I get to choose for myself what projects, intellectual projects to work on. So I have enormous freedom in what, when, really is very attractive and a very free sort of life. So I know that university research careers are not everyone, but I hope that at least a few of you will think about going in that direction because the rewards, the personal rewards, are really very great indeed. Let me stop there and see if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Maskin. That was a really powerful reflection on how the pursuit of beauty and intellectual curiosity can be the starting point of a journey that then has enormous impact in the world. And I think as someone currently living in the UK, I'm very grateful for your contributions to the carbon scheme here. And I also agree with you that while research careers aren't for everyone, Stephen and I, who's my co-founder, often think that the mark of success in our program would be if in 6-7 years, some of the students who are on this call come back as mentors, as doctoral candidates themselves at Lumiere. And so I'm excited to see how that pans out over the course of the next decade. The floor is now yours. Graduating research scholars, parents, and mentors, please feel free to put your hand up if you have a question, and I will call on you. Please introduce yourself before you ask your question. If for some reason you're not able to speak, you're also welcome to put your question in the chat. Who would like to go first? Yep, Chungbi Yoon, over to you. Chungbi, we can't hear you for some reason.
Really? How about now?
That's better.
Sure, then I'll talk in like this. You talked about how mechanism design theory can be used to create an international treaty where it reduces carbon emissions. I was wondering how this treaty can supplant previous ones, such as the Sustainable Development Goals. Because I remember that UN also had such a treaty before about climate change that was supposed to end in 2015, but it's now postponed to 2030. So, in what way will a treaty developed through mechanism design theory differ to what happened with sustainable development goals?
Thank you. Do you mind introducing yourself really quickly?
Oh, right. My name is Chung Byun from Singapore School Cebu. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Well, the big difficulty in designing a treaty, well, there are two big difficulties in designing a treaty for climate change. The first one is that uh, each country would prefer for other countries to make reductions, but not make reductions itself. Because it's expensive making reductions. For example, you have to eliminate old technologies. In the UK, for example, they've by now essentially eliminated coal as an energy technology because coal produces so much carbon dioxide. You have to switch to so-called green energy, and the transition is expensive. Um, so no country wants to do this on its own. But that's so a treaty enables a country to say, well, I have to make this reduction, but in exchange, I'm getting all the other countries to make reductions as well. But then the question arises, well, how much is each country going to reduce? And there's often a conflict among countries on this question because poorer countries which have been developing only in recent times will say, you know, we shouldn't have to reduce as much as you rich countries because you got rich by emitting a lot of carbon. Why shouldn't we have the same opportunities that you did? So an important ingredient in designing an international treaty that everyone is willing to sign is making some accommodation for the unequal positions that different countries find themselves in, and helping to correct some of those inequalities. So I would say that compared with the climate treaties that have been in force up till now, a notable example was the Kyoto Protocols. The new climate treaty, which we don't have yet, but I am confident we will have within a few years, will first be much stricter than previous treaties about getting reductions down quickly. It's essential to get carbon emissions down to zero net levels within less than 10 years, but also will take better account of the disparity between countries in their abilities to make reductions in a way that doesn't harm their economies. This is not going to be easy, but it's possible.
Thank
Can
you,
I ask
Professor
one more
Maskin.
follow-up question?
Uh, how about we go to Mark first, and then if there are no other takers, we can come back to you, Chungmi. Is that okay? Perfect. Mark, over to you.
Right. My name is Mark Nashi. I'm currently a senior at Single Mountain Middle High School in Tennessee. And my question is more on the basis of mathematics. So, as a mathematician, you've probably heard about the debate of whether math is created or discovered. And I was wondering, you talked about the beauty of math, and I was wondering, in your experience, have you seen, um, or more so, what are your opinions on this debate? And have you seen math um have you seen the applications of math be more so developed, like um created, or have you seen it um sort of already been in the real world?
Well, it certainly is an interesting and probably ultimately unresolvable debate. Is math discovered or created? My own view is that it's largely discovered, and the reason I say that is that if we discover, say, a new kind of number, there are, for example, certain special numbers called perfect numbers, which the mathematicians here know about, not numbers where the sum of the divisors adds up to the number itself, like 6, 28. We don't create the perfect numbers; they're already there. We try to find them, and we have found quite a few, although we don't even know at this point whether there are infinitely many of them or only finitely many. The reason I view mathematics as discovery is whatever we do in mathematics, we are limited by the properties of the objects, which could be numbers or sets, that are already there. We can't change those properties ourselves. All we can do is try to understand them, and this is true for mathematics, which is used in applications as well. Still, there's a lot of creativity involved in mathematics, not in creating the objects themselves, but in understanding the connections between those objects and something else. For example, when Andrew Wiles proved Fermat's last theorem, Fermat's last theorem is a statement about a polynomial equation, x to the n plus y to the n equals z to the n. It turned out that answering that question involved answering questions about elliptic curves, which on the face of it don't seem to have anything to do with numbers at all. And it was finding the connection between these two very different kinds of mathematical objects that was the creative part of Wiles's proof, and that's what I mean by beauty in mathematics: discovering connections that you you never thought would be there, but that illuminates your discoveries.
Thank you so much. Professor Maskin, do we have time for maybe 2 questions more, or?
Okay, let's take 2 questions more.
Excellent. So the 2 hands that I saw up first were Sophia Langford and Eleanor Hepper. So Sophia, if you want to go first, and then Eleanor will get to you.
Okay. Well, I'm Sophia, and I'm from the Midwestern U.S. And my question is, you talked about using the mechanism design to find solutions to climate change. It might just be because I got up early, but I don't really understand how mechanism design applies to climate change, because the way I heard it, the way that it works just doesn't seem to take into account any social like possibilities, or like possibilities of certain behaviors at all. So I was just wondering how mechanism design, which seems so much of a robust, finite, concrete thing, could be applied to something as socially flexible as creating a treaty between countries. Like, there could be multiple different outcomes.
So a mechanism in the field of mechanism design is just a set of rules that have to be followed by all the participants, in which each participant has different choices that it could make. And when you take the choices that have been selected by each of the participants, the mechanism gives you an outcome.
That makes a lot more sense.
Okay, so maybe I hadn't been clear about what a mechanism is. A mechanism is, you could think of it, if you've heard of game theory, a mechanism is a game in which the players are the participants, and each player has a possible set of strategies. And when each player has selected a strategy, the game determines an outcome. And in the case of a treaty, the possible choices that, well, first of all, the players are the participants in the treaty, the different countries, and each country can select a climate policy. So it has some flexibility over its climate policy, and the climate policies end up determining how much carbon dioxide gets emitted globally, and it also determines some other consequences for the countries involved. So if, for example, we're concerned with treating poorer countries more leniently, the treaty might have a provision that if this poor country is able to cut its carbon emissions by 75% within 10 years, then it will get an infusion of cash, a cash transfer from other countries as a reward for making that sacrifice.
Yeah, I can. That makes more sense now. I can see how that works. Thank you for letting me speak.
Sure.
Thank you. And the final question, Eleanor, I'll pass to you.
हेलो
Hello.
हाँ बताओ सो तो नहीं रहे थे
Sorry, 1 second, Eleanor. I think someone else might be speaking, so I'm just going to mute everyone. Eleanor, you can unmute yourself again and ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Alanur Heper, and first of all, I really want to thank you for your speech. I think it was really inspiring and helpful for me. So I'm also a student who is interested in the field of mathematics, and I really am considering to take the path of research in college. So I'm also really interested in the applications of mathematics in real life, as you have mentioned in your speech. So I was wondering, what would be the main advice you would give to students who want to study mathematics-related majors in college? And thank you again.
So sorry, Professor Maskin, you'll have to unmute yourself again. I had to mute everyone in the room.
So I suppose the best advice I could give is to maybe try out something similar to what I did, which was to take, if you're planning to be a math major, to take plenty of math and try as quickly as possible to get to higher levels, because because higher level math tends to be the most beautiful and most exciting. But also to try out some courses which use math for applied purposes, and this could be in economics, it could be in computer science, it could be in physics, it could be in biology. There are many areas of study, many research areas which use math in interesting and powerful ways. And by taking these applied courses, you can help figure out which ones appeal to you. So in my case, I did take some physics when I was in college, but it was really the economics applications that grabbed my attention. The mechanism design applications, because first these seem to be really important from the standpoint of the world, but also they seem to have some interesting mathematical challenges. So that it was that combination that appealed to me. But you can't figure this out for yourself unless you try it out. So college is a good time, in my view, to experiment and the goal is to figure out what you really like to do and what you really want to go on to study more of.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Perfect. Thank you guys for those questions. I know there are some hands up, but unfortunately, we're going to have to shift into student presentations. Thank you so much, Professor Maskin, for spending your morning with us. We really appreciate it. And I think the sort of joy that you have in the work that you do in research and in math really shone through and hopefully inspired some students in the audience. So thank you so much once again. And yeah.
Well, a pleasure being with you, and good luck to everyone. It sounds like a terrific group of young people. So, and congratulations on your success in the program. I'll say goodbye for now. Bye-bye.
By Professor Maskin, and I'm going to pass over to Prakriti, our head of program operations, to lead the student presentations. Prakriti, over to you.
Thank you so much, and hello, welcome, and congratulations, everyone, on making it to the end of your papers, to the end of your cohort. I hope it's been a really, really fruitful, exciting, amazing, confusing, curious time for you over the course of the last couple of months. I know it has been for the program managers, for our team, just to watch you grow, watch you submit your deadlines, sometimes ask for extensions. But I think with all of that, it is so wonderful to see that we have finally gotten to this point. A long-standing Lumiere tradition that we've got that we just appreciate so much is student presentations. This is an opportunity for your peers to be working on to share what it is that they've been working on over the last 3 months. A lot of people have come in with such interesting findings across a multitude of disciplines, and it's an excellent opportunity for us to just get a glimpse of, well, just 5 to 6 out of 1,400 different research projects that have been conducted in this past summer. So I'm just going to share my screen, and we're going to kick off with Philip as our very first presenter. Philip, I'll pass it over to you. Just give me one quick second to pull up the right screen. So I think my screen might not be visible. Let me just fix that.
No worries.
Thank you. Okay, there we go. We are here. Awesome. Let us get started. Philip, the floor is yours.
Hello all, my name is Philip Spradlin, and today I will be talking to you all a bit about my research this summer within my chosen field of study, specifically linguistics. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the support and resources my mentor, Dennis Satik of Harvard University, has provided me with over the course of the past 3 months. So my research question was, in what ways do specific case studies of languages provide evidence for or against the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, while distinguishing Sapir-Whorf's stronger form of linguistic determinism from its weaker form of linguistic relativity? And I know that's a lot, so I'll break down exactly what that means in just a minute. So some background for my research. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is the basic idea that one's language influences their thought and or perception of the world. Sapir-Whorf has a stronger and a weaker form. Their stronger form, linguistic determinism, must be distinguished from its weaker form of linguistic relativity. Linguistic relativity is defined as the idea that language merely influences thought but does not determine it. Linguistic determinism, on the other hand, is the idea that language strictly determines cognition. An example of linguistic relativity and determinism in action can be seen in the cases of the German and Spanish languages. For instance, the German word for key is masculine in the German language, and as such, speakers describe a key, when surveyed, to be heavy, jagged, and hard, traits that are stereotypically associated with masculinity. On the other hand, the Spanish word for key is feminine, and as such, Spanish speakers, when surveyed, describe the key as elegant, pretty, and delicate, stereotypically feminine traits. Because the word for key is gendered in Spanish and German, an aspect of those languages' linguistic systems, those speakers' perception of the characteristics of a key is influenced by their language, an idea that is central to linguistic relativity and the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. So moving on to my methods and analysis. So this research paper included a case study methodology and qualitative research, including a literature review, which helped in systematic investigation of how language impacts thought in various languages and in what ways those case studies provide evidence for or against the aforementioned Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. For this paper, I analyzed the languages displayed in the map below. I looked for ways in which these languages' structures may have influenced their speakers' cognition, and I analyzed studies that had already been done, for the most part, to look for evidence in favor for or against linguistic relativity. And as you can see in this map, these languages that I analyzed for my research ranged from more widely spoken or more widely known languages like Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, or German, to languages most people haven't heard of, like the Piraha language of the Brazilian Amazon, the Jahai language of northern peninsular Malaysia, and the Borneo language spoken by a group of Aborigines in Papua New Guinea. And I'll provide one example of my explorations of these languages with Piraha, so spoken by approximately 350 hunter-gatherers in the Amazon rainforest of Brazil. And you can see Piraha on my map just right in the middle of South America. The language is strikingly different from most of the world's languages. So the Piraha language actually has no words for hello, no words for thank you, and no words for sorry. They have no words for colors or numbers, and they have no way of expressing the past, including no way of expressing any history that occurred beyond the span of their lifetimes. So since they had few words to express exact values, they did not have any basic numeracy skills, the Piraha were worried that they were being cheated in trade because they didn't understand the mathematics behind trade, prompting an academic named Daniel Everett, who originally came to the Brazilian Amazon to preach Christianity, but soon became atheist and instead devoted his life to teaching the Piraha. So this academic named Everett tried to teach the Piraha people how to count as well as basic mathematics. And yet, even after 8 months of daily effort on Everett's part, not a single Piraha could count to 10 or even compute 1 + 1 after 8 months of daily lessons. Therefore, since they are unable to acquire basic numeracy and computation skills, the Piraha's ability to express themselves and their ideas are limited by their linguistic system, which does not enable them to acquire basic numeracy skills. The structure and limitations of their language had failed them, rendering them unable to grasp the concept of exact large quantities. So that's just an example there. And so moving on to my findings and my conclusion, excuse me. Through a comprehensive analysis of various languages and linguistic structures, this research paper has found and demonstrated the validity of linguistic relativity while highlighting the limitations of determinism. And so my own findings from studying language cases, including Jahai, Piraha, German, etc., were consistent with the general linguistic consensus that linguistic determinism is invalid, while relativity is valid and is now widely accepted in academia. Finally, we can conclude that the coexistence of linguistic relativity and the acknowledgement of thought's autonomy from linguistic constraints offer a comprehensive framework that better encapsulates the intricate dynamics of human cognition. Such an approach paves the way for enriched cross-cultural communication, cognitive research, and appreciation for the extraordinary complexity with which language and thought intertwine. And I apologize for losing my voice in the end a little bit there, but thank you so much for listening, and I really appreciate having the opportunity to present my project. Thank you so much.
That was incredible, Philip. Thank you so much. For everyone in the audience, also a long-standing tradition that we've got for Symposium is to congratulate our speaker and our presenter every single time they present. Philip, I think your research is so interesting, and even just the examples that you've offered about the Piraha language, is so fascinating. I think the history of linguistics and even understanding how language impacts cognition is so interesting. There are actually a couple of questions for you in the chat, or just comments from folks if you want to address them as we move forward. But thank you so much, and congratulations, Philip.
Of course, I hope you all enjoyed my presentation as much as I enjoyed researching, so thank you.
Wonderful. Now we move on to our second presentation, which will be presented by Chungwi Yun. So I'm just going to pass it over to you, Chungwi, to walk us through more on CAR T cells.
Thank you. Before that, could you confirm that my voice is audible?
Yes.
Great. Good morning. My name is Chung Byun. But before I begin my presentation, I also want to thank my mentor, teacher Kendra Libby, and my program manager, Dawani, who helped me become the researcher I am today. My research question is about how engineering advances to CAR T cells reduce T cell exhaustion and improve anti-tumor activity. But let's break down the big words here. CAR T cells are basically a product of CAR T cell therapy, which is a type of immunotherapy that targets cancer cells. If we move on to the next slide, we can see what cancer is. Cancer is a prevalent and significant global health issue, which is responsible for about 1 in 6 deaths worldwide, surpassing the combined impact of AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. While T cells are cells in the body that fight against cancer. Because cancer cells sometimes escape from T cells, scientists engineer these special types of cells called chimeric antigen receptor T cells, also known as CAR T cells, which prevent escape and kills cancer cells. At the left, we can see that there are some T cells in our bloodstream that are traveling to fight against cancer. And at the right, we have a schematic diagram of how this works. So basically, a T cell has a protein called a T cell receptor, which will recognize any antigens presented by the major histocompatibility complex on a cancer cell. And once this is recognized, the T cell is able to initiate its cytotoxic activity by releasing substances that will kill the cancer cell. The problem really is when the T cell's TCR isn't able to pick up any signals because the tumor cells sometimes fails to present their antigens on their major histocompatibility complex. So what the engineers did was that they attached another receptor to the T cell, which is called the CAR protein. And this is able to detect any antigens on the cell surface membrane, even if they're not presented on the major histocompatibility complex. Among the types of cancer, CAR T cells have limited effectiveness against solid tumors. Experiments show that this is because CAR T cells become exhausted when killing solid tumors. For my research, I conducted a database search of different types of CAR T cells being investigated to see in mitigating solid tumors. I especially focused on their exhaustion levels and their anti-tumor activity. Through evaluating these different papers, I was able to consider their differences in their methodologies, which could have affected their experimental results. And with those methods, I was able to find the following. Number one, CAR T cells become exhausted because they're constantly exposed to cancer cells or they're inadvertently activated even though there are no cancer cells. Using drugs or built-in mechanisms, CAR T cells can pause for a moment to rest. This is known as transient rest. Yeah, what would you like to talk about, Gurner? Oh, maybe that was a mistake. I'll go on. So what happens is that the T cell right here, oh, could you move to the previous slide, please? The T cell right here who's exhausted may have limited function, but after having a transient rest, is able to recover its persistence and anti-tumor activity. Number two, recent advances in CAR T cell engineering created CAR T cells which can induce transient rest, such as Synapse CAR T cells, microenvironment regulated CAR T cells with drug sensitive promoters, and CAR T cells with degradable CARs. While I love to discuss all of them, because of time constraints, I'll only discuss the most effective one, which is the CAR T cell with degradable CARs. Among these four types, CAR T cells with degradable CARs has the quickest response time to external drugs and low leaky activity. It also needs the lowest dosage of drugs to induce transient rest. What this means is that if you want to try to induce transient rest in these T cell population, they're able to respond to it quickly by having transient rest immediately. And when I say that they have low leaky activity, it basically means that when we have a CAR T cell population, a majority of them will be having rest, while some of them will still be activated if we induce transient rest. Lastly, low dosages of drugs are important because high dosages can harm the body. The figure on the right depicts the mechanism by which CAR T cells with degradable CARs work. So what happens is when we add the drug lenalidomide into our bodies, these will bind to the CAR protein on the T cell to trigger the ubiquitin ligase, a type of protein, and recruit it. What happens next is that the ubiquitin ligase protein will mark the CAR protein for degradation so that other organelles in the cell will degrade the CAR protein. And then the T cell would no longer have any CAR protein to detect these cancer cells. So they become inactivated as a result. Overall, all of these findings contribute to our treatment to developing solid tumors. Thank you for listening.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Chumbi. I think one thing that just stood out is you're so good at breaking down seemingly super difficult conversations and topics. I'm sure CAR T cells are things your mentors have worked years and years on, where you were able to explain it over the course of 3 slides, which gave such a professor vibe. So I love that so much. But thank you so much for sharing that. I think that was amazing. And again, some wonderful questions and comments for you in the chat. So do go over them. But that was amazing. Congratulations on your project. We now move on, of course. We now move on to our third presentation, which will be presented by Aditya Kumar Jha. Aditya, feel free to take the wheel and tell us a little bit more about your work.
Yeah, I hope my voice is audible.
Yes.
Yeah. So, greetings everyone. This is Aditya Kumar Jha. I'm a high school sophomore from India, and I'm here to present my research in front of you all. But before starting off, I'd really like to thank Lumiere for giving me this amazing opportunity to present here at the symposium, and most importantly, my mentor Ramesh Sundarajan from University College London for guiding me throughout this whole process of my research, which helped me immensely in developing an impactful project this summer. Now, to begin with, what was my research on? So, my research question was to study the significance of specific pathways which are listed on screen. So, some of them include TGF-beta induced cancer progression, MAPK pathways. So, these are some pathways which, in association with 9 genetic signatures, and how they affect cancer progression, specifically non-small cell lung cancer, and studying how these insights from their significance can be leveraged for the development of targeted therapeutics. Now, for the background of my project, lung cancer accounts for a staggering 1.8 million deaths last year.
Aditya, I'm super sorry to interrupt you. I think your voice has become a little hoarse suddenly. Could you try maybe moving your mic closer?
Yeah, hello. Is my voice audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving forward to my background on this research, so lung cancer accounts for a staggering 1.8 million deaths last year, and it still remains the leading cause of cancer-related mortality worldwide, affecting both men and women. The transition from a healthy state to a malignant lung cancer involves a gradual accumulation of genetic and epigenetic alterations, ultimately leading to invasive cancer through clonal expansion. Some conventional treatments for NSCLC, while valuable, do come with their limitations. These include risk of severe complications, inefficiency, limited precision, resistance to chemotherapy, limited applicability, and long-term side effects. And to address these challenges, RNA-based therapeutics, specifically messenger RNA, which are mRNAs, and long non-coding RNAs, which are LNC RNAs, hold immense potential for enhancing protein expression and therapeutic efficacy and their advantages. These RNA molecules offer an edge over the traditional approaches, promising better transfection, efficiency, and sustained protein expression. Moving on to my methods and analysis, let's understand the methodology which was employed in this study for a comprehensive understanding of the molecular mechanisms underlying this cancer. The study was divided into 2 main parts: a thorough literature review and an extensive bioinformatics analysis, which aimed to unfold the complexities of NSCLC at the molecular level. So the literature review encompassed a meticulous search across databases and research studies, reviewing a total of 33 papers from reputable sources like PubMed, Google Scholars, and Science Direct, which were associated with the study objective. Moving on, the bioinformatics analysis involved gene expression and pathway enrichment analysis, along with differential gene expression data analysis, which utilized robust tools and databases. The pathway enrichment analysis utilized the enricher function and the KEGG 2019 human database for importing pathway data and providing insights into the correlated pathways in lung cancer leading to metastasis. Now, pathway basically is any chemical reaction that takes place in your body whenever any alteration takes place at the molecular level, which in our case is non-small cell lung cancer. And the KEGG 2019 human database comprises of all those pathways and reactions which take place in our body. And that's what I have used in this research study. Then for the differential gene expression analysis, I used Rust and the GEO query package from BioC Manager, which enabled extraction of gene expression data for test and control patients through the GEO database. So I used a database and a study wherein 66 patients were enrolled, 33 in the test group and 33 in the control group, and analyzed their data, their genetic expression, which I'll be talking about further. And finally, the gene expression data visualization were visually assessed using the p-heat map function, and the frequency of the mutations which were taking in the lungs was compared to transcript regions through the expression function for the box plot analysis. Moving on to the findings of my research, let's move on with the literature review. So for the literature review, it was revealed that NSCLC development is majorly governed by molecular alterations orchestrated through complex signaling pathways that regulate the fundamental cellular processes. Notably, the signaling pathways like MAPK, PI3K, WNT-beta-catenin, and TGF-beta induced cancer progression emerge as highly associated with NSCLC progression, suggesting their potential as effective therapeutic targets. A meta-analysis to specifically identify mRNA and long non-coding RNA signatures in lung cancer narrowed down to the focus of 9 crucial genes, which were namely AGER, ANK3, CSTA, FGG, AGR, 2, BRCA1, SDAC1, microRNA 577, TRIM29, PIK3CA, and JNK, paving the way for a deeper analysis. Further investigation also highlighted the pivotal roles of the same genes mentioned earlier in correlation with signaling pathways, providing a foundational understanding of NSCLC progression and revealing how these pathways had the involvement in cell apoptosis, metastasis of cancer, drug resistance, and tumor suppression. Now, moving forward for the bioinformatics analysis, let's turn our attention to the insights that were gained through the rigorous bioinformatics analysis. Can I please have the figures, please? We have one more figure on the right side. Yeah. So for the pathway enrichment analysis, it was revealed that the mitotic cell pathways play a key role in NSCLC progression. Now, to make it really simple for you guys, with focus on genes HDAC1, microRNA 577, TRIM29, and all those genes which I mentioned in the previous slide, the KEGG pathway enrichment revealed signaling pathways which were linked to NSCLC development and its metastasis, including chronic myeloid leukemia, longevity regulating pathway, thyroid hormone signaling pathway, viral carcinogenesis, Epstein-Barr virus infection, and microRNAs in cancer. So, as you can see on the screen, the figure on the right side shows all the correlated pathways with NSCLC. The more the pathway enrichment has been shown, the less significant it is. So it's basically the inverse of the general analysis that we do. And the pathways on the left side are the top 10 enriched pathways which are associated with lung cancer. Now, this was just the first part of our bioinformatics analysis. Moving on to the further visualization of the gene expression data that I did was using the control and test data, as I mentioned in the materials and methods slide. So when I actually did the correlation heat mapping, it was revealed that TRIM29 in control samples and AGR2 gene in the test samples indicate both of their therapeutic significance inversely in the test and control samples, providing valuable insights into gene expression patterns. The box plot analysis on the right side underscored the diagnostic potential of HDAC1 and BRCA1, providing a closer look at the gene expression profiles in NSCLC patients versus controls. The gene expression data for this bioinformatics analysis was acquired from an authorized study which had the data code as GSE7670. and it had a microarray data of 66 patients, as I mentioned earlier. Now, you must be seeing these codes above the box plots, right? So these are nothing but the gene code. They are called Affymetrix probes. Now, whenever we feed the data into the machine, they don't take any type of gene names. Rather, they take Affymetrix probes. So the most upregulated and downregulated, or we can say overexpressed, underexpressed genes were HDAC1 and BRCA1, which basically summed up that the findings from this study serve as a foundation for the development of novel drugs and targeted therapeutics tailored to the specific molecules of NSCLC patients, which has been revealed through this study. In conclusion, this multifaceted approach equips us with a deeper understanding of non-small cell lung cancer, paving the way for more effective personalized treatments. However, further research is still needed to validate the findings from this study through laboratory experiments on live cancer tissues for development of targeted therapeutics for non-small cell lung cancer. I really appreciate everyone for listening to my research project patiently. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aditya. I think Surya said it in the chat. I love that there are so many students doing such meaningful research on something that has always been so prevalent and something that's discussed so much, i.e. cancer. And Aditya, in your case in particular, I love that you were able to explore different methodologies in order to address your questions. So both, I think literature reviews are of course so helpful, but to actually get to do a gene expression analysis, I think you've gotten into the deep end of all things statistics and data analytics, which is so amazing. But wonderful work on that front. Thank you so much for sharing, and congratulations on completing your project.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Maria Camila Rojas, who will be telling us a little bit more about water scarcity through her research project. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, my name is Maria Camila Rojas. I'm a senior and I'm studying in Colombia, Latin America. And today I'll be presenting my research paper. So this paper was written with both the mentorship and guidance of Dr. Pallavi Khanna from Jamia Millia Islamia University in New Delhi. So I'd just like to take a moment to thank her for all of her hard work, as this really could not have been done without it. And so for my paper, I decided to take a bit of a different approach with the research questions, and I developed 3. And this is because I'm attempting to explore a very extensive field of knowledge, considering that I'm combining the topic of water scarcity with the more recent discussion that has been circulating around degrowth economic theory, which is relatively new, all things considered. So to briefly explain what these research questions will delve into, I will be looking at Canada, more specifically Ontario, as a case study, and we'll be analyzing its supply and demand side policies that aim to address water scarcity, evaluating if they are the most effective that they could be. And if not, I will be also looking at economic theories, primarily degrowth, to see if they could in any way be applied to make these policies more effective. And finally, I evaluated whether or not the current policy system truly aligns with the country's commitment to reach the United Nations SDG goals, which are postulated to be completed by 2030. So if we go on to the next slide, to provide a bit of background on this topic, water scarcity is very well researched and very addressed throughout the world, but it's important to distinguish that there are many types of water scarcity. Primarily physical, which refers to when there is pretty much not enough water to meet the literal demands that the population has, and economical, which focuses more on when there are certain barriers that prevent people from accessing potable water resources, whether these be financial, infrastructure-based, among others. And it's also important to acknowledge that organizations such as UNICEF have made it quite clear that even developed countries, such as Canada, struggle to provide their citizens with potable, clean, safe drinking water. And this is especially true in Canada, considering the fact that drinking water advisories, which for anyone who may not know, are government-issued warnings against drinking the tap water that's meant to be potable, are still quite prevalent in the nation, even to this day. So with all of this established, for me, the real focus of the study was looking at why these issues still arise and what is wrong and what could be improved from the current flagship policy system. And also, I looked into at how alternate mindsets, economic theories, etc., could be applied to perhaps skew the direction of these policies to make them more focused on what Canada truly needs. And in this case, I found that degrowth was particularly relevant because in its most basic terms, it focuses on biophysical limitations that could arise and also the possible problems that exist with the terms such as sustainable growth for developed nations. So if we go on to the next slide, and I'll explain the methods and analysis for this paper. And I used two different types. So I used a policy analysis, which is a qualitative research method. And I also looked into policy results, which constitutes more of a quantitative technique. So for the former, I decided to look at 4 specific policies, 2 on the demand side and 2 on the supply side, and evaluate them on the basis of 3 primary factors, which are scope, flexibility, and long-term sustainability. And the reason why I chose these is because I think they encapsulate what is most important for these policies to display, and also because the factors that go into like results of these policies are more so covered in my quantitative analysis. And for this, I chose 3 metrics that pretty well represented what could be interpreted as the results of the policy analysis, these being water extraction results, water resource conservation, and drinking water quality. And these this data set that I looked at is not only important to like support the findings from the policy analysis, but it also helped me illustrate a bigger picture, a better picture of Canada's strengths and weaknesses in more specific, minute detail to see what recommendations could be made for the future in policy analysis regarding water scarcity. And so finally, looking at the findings, one major conclusion that was made from the research of this paper was that Canada overall has a very well-established system for its municipalities, meaning that they, in and of themselves, can provide pretty safe, clean drinking water to their communities. However, this is rather lacking especially for minority communities like First Nations, Indigenous groups. And this also adds on to the fact that Canada is very much a supply policy-based country, meaning that there is a severe lack of demand-side policies meant to address demand-side issues. And this is quite worrying when one considers that Canada is in fact behind only the United States in terms of overconsumption for water, especially for more affluent communities. Now, to look into the quantitative results for this study, they all pretty much supported the conclusions that I stated prior, and this can be seen in the graph on the right. So to briefly explain what these results mean, it basically shows that drinking water services that are meant to provide for First Nations communities have a much lower degree of quality for the water that they provide when compared to systems in, for example, Toronto or British Columbia. Now, these systems are more well established and have better infrastructure to provide their citizens with water than First Nations communities. And this truly shows a disconnect between social and economic factors in terms of their ability to access water. Now, overall, this truly shows that there are certain things to be improved, especially in the long-term sustainability of Canada's policy framework. And for this, I suggested that, in fact, it could be very beneficial to adopt the degrowth mindset model, as it focuses more on stabilization of the system rather than what would be commonly assumed to be the more beneficial model of constant growth, consumption, and what we really truly see in this modern day and age. And basically what I'm arguing is that there should be a bigger focus on stabilization, because in the long term, there really is not a multifaceted barrier approach to aid minority groups, minority communities within these systems. And it's quite worrying considering that water is pretty much an essential facet of life. And it truly should be, like the United Nations stated, something that is undeniable for most people. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you all enjoyed it and found it interesting.
Thank you so much for that, Camila. I think you were able to touch on two really important conversations with your research. The first is, of course, just the issue of water scarcity, especially in the context of climate change. The second is just nations' economic priorities, and the fact that a lot of things can often feel like they're very growth-centric, without any consideration for ideas like degrowth. So I love that you were able to explore both those things and combine them for this research. I think there are a couple of questions for you in the chat as well, but thank you so much for sharing this project with us, and congratulations on such an insightful finding. We will now move on to our final speaker of the day, Sophia, who will be giving us a quick overview of her project as well. Sophia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So I'm Sophia. Hi, I'm from Pakistan. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin with a question. When you think about artificial intelligence, do you ever wonder who the invisible architects behind these systems are? The answer lies in the crucial yet overlooked role of data annotators. Today, I'm excited to share my groundbreaking research that uncovers the multi-layered dynamics of this pivotal industry. But before that, I would really like to thank my mentor, Cameron, and my program manager, Tanvika, for their imperative and appreciated guidance throughout my research paper. So with that, let's move on to the background. So what is data annotation? It's the process of categorizing and labeling data to enable its use in AI applications. The effectiveness of AI implementations heavily relies on well-annotated training data. So data annotators meticulously tag various types of data such as images, text, and audio in order to develop intelligent models. But despite their vital role, data annotators often do not receive the recognition they deserve, as algorithms tend to get most of the credit. Moreover, annotators bring a valuable human perspective, capturing nuances that automated systems often overlook. While their work is of high quality, they are constrained by the limitations of human processing speed. In an era where time is of the essence, this becomes a catch-22 situation. Must we compromise quality for speed? This paper delves into the future of employment and job security in the data annotation for human data annotation within the AI industry. It explores the potential challenges of annotators working towards rendering their own jobs obsolete. So let's go to the So this paper used two methodologies: the literature review, which was a qualitative method, which helped me collect information on the experience of annotators around the world and the main problems attached with this industry. So many websites and papers were read in order to gain a very in-depth understanding of these issues and the ethical situation of the data annotation industry. So these resources were also used to show the globalized nature of the problem. So then coming on to the interviews. I took 20 interviews, and it was they were qualitative, yeah. So the participants were divided into 3 sectors: annotators, their managers, and the leaders of the AI organizations. The interviews, which were namely from the leaders of the AI organizations, helped me find out the future of the unemployment and job security for data annotators. So industry connections as well as LinkedIn was used to find participants, and the interviews were conducted on Zoom as well as in person, depending on the availability and the location of the participants. So then let's go into the findings. So let's delve into the ethical aspects of the data annotation industry. It can be a source of livelihood for marginalized communities, but there is a thin line between financial empowerment and exploitation. Disturbingly, numerous annotators endure subpar working conditions and low wages. Navigating this ethical challenge goes way beyond corporate social responsibility. It's about upholding basic human decency. As automation in data annotation grows, the question arises, will data annotators become obsolete? But my research indicates a more nuanced outlook. We foresee the roles of data annotators evolving rather than becoming extinct. As AI systems become more complex, the tasks they cannot perform will become increasingly intricate, and that's where human expertise will always be needed. So how can data annotators ensure career longevity in a rapidly evolving industry? Our study found that continuous learning is not just advisable, it's imperative. Upskilling and diversification across different types of annotation projects can significantly improve job security and progression. My study is just the tip of the iceberg. Future research must focus on the experiences of low-wage annotators and expand the geographical scope for a comprehensive understanding of the data of the industry's global footprint. So as AI technologies become increasingly embedded in our lives, the data annotation sector stands at an intriguing crossroad. Will it be a story of human data annotators becoming obsolete, or a tale of co-evolution? We lean towards the latter because the journey ahead requires thoughtful ethical considerations and a commitment to continuous learning. This is a dialogue that needs to happen today for a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a topical presentation, for such topical research, Sophia. I think I don't think anyone has really thought about what data annotators do and like their role in this entire AI boom, but so important to think about where their future lies. And I love that you're doing that. And I love the energy with which you have done that. I'm hoping everyone drop W's in the chat for Sophia and the newscaster energy with which this is presented. Thank you so much for sharing these findings with us, and congratulations on wrapping up your paper.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really grateful.
Of course. And with that, we are done with our student presentations. Thank you all so much for the energy that you brought forth in the comments. I loved the questions that you were asking. It really felt like it was such an engaged community, and I'm really glad we could create that together once again at the end of the program. The final thing to just remind all of you is to stay connected to our alumni network. One of the biggest ways that you can do this is by joining our Discord server and staying active there. You've got alums all the way from summer 2021 lurking about, as well as our fresh new fall 2023 students who have recently joined. So in case you haven't joined, feel free to do so. It's available. The link is available on your guidebook. And outside of that, we will of course be in touch with regular updates. We'd love to check in on you, especially as you reach your graduation from high school, the more official one. We'd love to just stay in touch and make sure that that is a smooth process for you, but you can always reach out to us if you ever need to. And with that, I would like to officially welcome you to the Lumiere alumni family. We are growing and growing, and I'm so grateful that each and every single one of you is here growing with us. So thank you so much for the work that you've done over the last 3 months. I hope it's felt meaningful. I hope watching some of the incredible projects that your peers have done has also given you a sense of everything that's happening. I don't know if you'll remember, but the orientation that we had done for the summer, one of the first questions that we had asked you was to drop your research interests in the chat. And suddenly the chat had like 220 messages in the span of like 10 seconds. And I think we've gone from just knowing broadly that, oh, I'm interested in biotech or AI or physics. We've gone to completing those research projects and sharing them with one another. So thank you so much for all of that and for joining us today as we celebrate you and the awesome, awesome work that you have done. stay in touch. As always, let us know if you need anything. Drop thank you notes to team members who've made this easy for you. Drop thank you notes for your mentors as you wrap up this project, and have a wonderful academic career ahead. We're so excited for everything you're going to do. Thank you. With this, we wrap up today's graduation ceremony. Congratulations, cohort of summer 2023.
Thank you so much for this wonderful symposium. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
So much. Thank you so much. This was incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you.